Imagine moving into your dream home. The perfect neighborhood, quiet streets, friendly neighbors, and that fresh new home feeling. You picture peace, barbecues, and Sunday mornings without stress. You imagine a place where you can finally breathe, relax, and enjoy life. But then, something happens that no one tells you about when you sign the papers. Something that slowly, subtly turns your dream into a nightmare. Yes, I'm talking about the Homeowner Association, the HOA. Have you ever been fined for something you didn't even know was wrong? I certainly hadn't until it started happening to me. At first, it seemed harmless. A polite notice about my mailbox not matching the community standard, a suggestion to trim a bush a little shorter. I thought, okay, no big deal. But the notices kept coming, each one stranger than the last. My garbage bin was apparently a violation if it stayed outside for more than 7 minutes. Curtains had to be a certain shade. Even the type of flowers I planted was suddenly non-compliant. It's crazy what some people will try to control, even in your own backyard.
I tried to reason with them, thinking surely common sense will prevail. But the HOA didn't play by logic. They played by power. They sent inspectors, took photos of my property without permission, and left passive-aggressive notes taped to my door at odd hours. Every day I felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. I even noticed the looks from other neighbors, the ones who seemed afraid to speak up. Some whispered about fines they'd received, others shook their heads, silently warning me that this fight might be bigger than I imagined. And then came the moment that changed everything. You won't believe what happened when I decided to make a simple home improvement. I had planned to renovate my backyard, a simple project, fully legal, fully permitted. I submitted the paperwork and waited, expecting maybe a polite approval. Instead, the HOA stormed in, full of authority, claiming my backyard project violated their visual harmony code. They brought their clipboards, their rules, and their threatening attitude. I could see in their eyes that they were ready to enforce fines, threaten lawsuits, and bully me. But they didn't know I had done my homework. Sometimes knowing your rights is more powerful than any letter or threat.
I pulled out official property documents, county permits, and records proving that my land extended beyond what the HOA claimed. I calmly explained my legal rights while recording the confrontation for proof. The board president, who used to treat homeowners like obedient soldiers, went completely silent. The smug smile on their faces disappeared in an instant. And that's when the tables turned, dramatically. But the story didn't end there. Word spread through the neighborhood about the confrontation, and suddenly neighbors started sharing their own stories of ridiculous fines, intrusive inspections, and petty complaints. Some had been threatened for painting their doors the wrong color. Others had been fined for parking a car in their own driveway. One neighbor even told me that the HOA had tried to block her from planting a vegetable garden, claiming it ruined the aesthetic. It was shocking how many people had quietly suffered, feeling trapped by rules they didn't agree to. I realized I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for the entire community. Soon, I began noticing more subtle forms of intimidation. Letters left at odd hours, neighbors being called into the HOA office for informal discussions, and whispers about fines that could escalate to liens on people's homes. Some families were genuinely scared to speak up, worried about retaliation. I remember one elderly neighbor telling me, with tears in her eyes, that she'd been paying fines for years for things she didn't even understand. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just bureaucracy. This was bullying, and it affected real people.
Within hours, the HOA scrambled to cover up their mistake with vague apologies and excuses. But the damage was already done. Their power was gone. I didn't stop there. I filed a formal complaint and pushed for a board election. Homeowners who had been quietly intimidated for years finally came forward to stand up against the abusive board. People started talking at block meetings, sharing stories, laughing nervously at the absurdity of the rules they had lived under. It's amazing what happens when people finally speak up. Suddenly, a movement builds, and the fear that had gripped the neighborhood begins to fade. The election day arrived, and I watched quietly as neighbors, many of whom I barely knew, cast their votes for change. Every single toxic board member was voted out, one by one. The new board publicly apologized, removed every fine, and acknowledged that my renovations were legal and fully approved. My backyard project not only continued, but became a symbol of triumph, a victory for anyone who has ever felt bullied by unnecessary rules. If you've ever felt trapped by rules you didn't agree to, this story is for you. After the ordeal, life in the neighborhood slowly returned to normal, but there was a difference. People smiled more freely, shared their gardens, and even helped each other with small projects. The fear that had once been everywhere, the whispered complaints about the HOA, had disappeared. Some neighbors came over just to thank me, saying they had wanted to fight back for years but didn't know how. I realized that standing up for yourself doesn't just change your life, it can inspire an entire community.
Even months later, I noticed the subtle changes. Neighbors talking openly about their plans, kids playing freely in front yards, and homeowners volunteering to improve the neighborhood without fear. The HOA had lost its grip, but more importantly, the culture of fear had been replaced by a culture of community and support. People were finally able to live in their homes as they were meant to. Today, I enjoy my home in peace, surrounded by beauty I created without fear. I plant flowers freely, host barbecues, and even help neighbors plan small projects without worrying about rules. And every time I walk through my backyard, I'm reminded of one lesson. HOA rules aren't the problem. It's people misusing power that can turn your life into a nightmare. Stand your ground, know your rights, and never let anyone bully you out of your own home. Because sometimes the biggest battles you fight are right at your front door. And if you think this is just my story, think again. There are countless neighborhoods where homeowners quietly endure harassment, fines, and ridiculous rules. It's easy to feel powerless, but knowledge and courage change everything. Never underestimate the impact of standing up, not just for yourself, but for your entire community. This is the story of how a few letters and petty rules turned into a full-blown fight, and how one person refusing to be intimidated changed the course of an entire neighborhood. And that, right there, is the power you hold in your own hands. Because the truth is, your home isn't just a building. It's a sanctuary, a place where memories are made, where laughter should echo freely, and where fear should never reside. And the day I realized I could take back that sanctuary, that's the day I truly felt free. Every small victory, every tiny confrontation, every legal document I held, it all led to that moment of triumph. And that triumph belongs not just to me, but to every homeowner who dares to stand up and say, "This is my home, and I will not be bullied."